On July 17th, Hart Wexford, that's Ben Pobjie, tweeted the following: "I like that Hayden Walsh Junior's parents named him after their three favourite cricketers." So why is this joke funny? What's the joke, first up? So Ben has one of the most comically creative minds I've ever encountered. But what makes this joke so impressive is that it doesn't actually require all that much in the way of creativity. Instead, what this joke required was for Ben to spot that Hayden Walsh Junior's name has a perfect rule of threes joke already built into it. And once Ben had made that observation, which is the key to the entire joke, the rest of the thing more or less wrote itself, I imagine. The rule of threes is a standard comedy structure. If you've ever written a joke, you've probably defaulted to writing it in that form. If you've ever read a joke, there's a high chance that you've read it in that form. And of course, if you've ever tried explaining a joke, then you soon realise that discussing a joke structure by using that structure is poor form. So as you can see from that really half-assed attempt from me, the rule of threes joke structure works by listing two normal items to establish a trend before the third item subverts that trend in, ideally, and again, not in that previous case, a comically satisfying way. Entire hack jokes can be built around the rule of threes. For example, an Englishman and a Scotsman might face a particular crisis. They might react in similar ways, but then an Irishman will come in and he'll respond to that same crisis in a comically stupid way in line with his, tired racial stereotype. Or a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead. They might yield similar hilarity, but this time based on, the alleged inherent idiocy associated with different hues of hair. And of course, we won't get started on those blonde Irish folk. They're trouble all the way down. But the rule of threes doesn't just exist to build lengthy jokes that mock entire peroxided nations of people. It also does really hard work within individual sentences of virtually every comic piece of writing you read. Again, all it takes is two run-of-the-mill items and then a third that subverts it. And the whole reason this rule of threes structure for jokes works is because it's built on a really solid mathematical principles. That may come as a surprise for people who don't think mathematics and comedy have anything in common. They definitely do. And the rule of threes is a perfect example, because as a basic principle, jokes work when they subvert expectations. If you supply a single piece of information, then you haven't really supplied any expectations to subvert. To do that, you need a second piece of information. That second piece of information, that's what establishes a trend. Only when you get the second piece of information can you find the similarities between the two items and know whether or not a third item will fit within or outside those first two items. So, thinking mathematical terms, a first piece of information is a point, a second piece of information is a second point, but that second piece of information creates a straight line, and that straight line is what allows you to extrapolate forward or backwards. And so, again, in mathematical terms, you could add a third item, one that didn't subvert the expectations, but it's not really necessary. 2 points define a line. So after two items, the trend has been established. You've added your first two points, your 2 points of information, and then the third item, you can go about subverting it at that point. There's no need to add any extra points to set the trend. The trend has been set. You're just wasting time at this point. Time to get to the punchline. Throw your third item in there and subvert the expectations. That's your joke. That's why it's a rule of threes. 2 items to establish a trend, the third to subvert it. And of course, Ben knows all this. Ben has probably written tens of thousands of rule of threes jokes in 2021 alone. And no doubt his enormous experience in writing the bloody things helped him spot the one that's built right into Hayden Walsh Junior's names. Because as Ben pointed out, it is very possible to imagine a world where HWJ's parents were big fans of both Matthew Hayden and Courtney Walsh, and hence named him Hayden Walsh. And of course, those two initial observations, they established the trend of naming him after the surnames of these great cricketers. And then to realise that Junior was the nickname of Mark Waugh, and therefore posit that this was A, the third favourite cricketer of HWJ's parents, and B, that his parents would then switch from surnames to nicknames, that's a perfect rule of threes joke. And the reason this joke works so perfectly is because it's his actual name. Ben hasn't made anything up. He's just spotted this astonishing joke that's built into this cricketer's name. It's a magnificent observation from Ben. One, I'm absolutely furious that I didn't spot myself because it's right there. But it took the genius of Ben to point it out for us. And obviously he didn't spell out the three favourite cricketers like I've just done. He didn't name Matthew Hayden, Courtney Walsh, and Mark Waugh. That's not necessary to make the joke work. In fact, it works counter to the joke. It's far more satisfying to the joke reader to infer the three cricketers from the information given. I mean, it's not a huge feat of deduction, but there's still a spark of satisfaction in making it. And as good as all that is, there is one bonus reason why this joke is so good. Ben explicitly goes out of his way to praise Hayden Walsh Junior's parents for their naming choices. He says, I like that Hayden Walsh Junior's parents, blah, 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 blah. And that praise actually gives a second level to the joke that's not immediately obvious, but it becomes so the instant you remember that Hayden Walsh Junior's parents did the absolute bare minimum of naming. You can't name somebody any less than just saying, same as his dad, I guess. So praising the creative naming choices is a nice little piece of ironic comedy to add to the mix. So overall, that's not a bad little 1-2 punch of comedy from Ben for a mere 14 words of text. And I guess the key lesson from this joke is the power of observation. Usually, when you think of observational comedy, you think of comedians like Seinfeld, who build their material by talking about everyday minutiae that they've observed that everybody recognises to be true, but nobody else has quite verbalised it in the same way. That's a style of comedy. Ben's gone one step further here, working on a meta comedy level, but using similar principles. So instead of observing cricket minutiae and making a joke about it, he's observed that there's an existing joke structure that already existed within cricket, one that nobody else had verbalised, and he pointed it out for all of us to enjoy. So, am I saying that Ben is funnier than Seinfeld? Not sure, but when was the last time Seinfeld tweeted a decent comic observation about a West Indian cricketer? That kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it? Okay, thanks for listening. Speak to you next time.